Okay, well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the virtual CICS user group. And let's click onto the next slide. I'm Trevor Eddles. I'm CEO of iTechEd Limited. We're a mainframe consultancy, analysis and technical authoring organization. Let me apologize for my voice. I've had a touch of flu, I think, over the past 2 days, and I've been left with a bit of a cough. Anyway, so iTechEd, we're the people responsible for the content on the virtual CICS website. We produce newsletters. And if you've not been on our website, you can find it at iteched.com/virtual CICS. Okay, let's go on. So today's agenda, most of the meeting will be taken up with a presentation, and today our guest presenter is Ezriel Gross. He's Principal Solutions Advisor for Rocket Software, and he'll be discussing OMEGAMON for CICS on ZOS 5.6 and CICS performance. A copy of the slides from this presentation will be on our website later today. And if you've missed our previous meetings, you can download copies of those presentations from our website too. And you can also listen again to previous meetings because the whole thing's recorded and the link's sitting there on our resources page. So that's iteched.com/virtual CICS/resources.htm. Following Ezriel's presentation and any questions you have for him, we'll move on to the latest CICS news and CICS related articles. Oh, excuse me. And then I'll give you the dates and times for the next virtual meetings. So that's the plan for this meeting, and I'm anticipating that it will last just under an hour. Anyway, as I just said, today's presentation is from Ezriel Gross. Ezriel's a Principal Solutions Advisor for Rocket Software, specializing in IBM CICS tools. He was formerly the CEO of Circle Software, which was acquired by Rocket Software in 2019, where he specialized in hands-on classes and consulting in CICS, DB2, and MQ series. Ezriel was a gold consultant for many years and is currently an IBM champion. His specialties include web services, web support, performance tuning, internals, CICS Plex SM, DevOps, and Liberty as they relate to CICS. He recently co-architected the CProf product, a tool that captures CICS trace without running in a CICS region. So, Ezriel, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today. And what I'd like to do is now give you control. So if you want to share your screen, thanks very much, then.
Sure. I will tell you I'm getting prompted to admit people, so it's possible, hopefully you'll get that.
Yeah, no, I'm still seeing them. I'll deal with all those newcomers.
Okay. So are you seeing my screen, Trevor?
Not yet.
Oh, that's not good.
We just tested this. We know it works.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to try it again. Okay, let's try this again. How about now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, good. Now let's find my presentation and we should be good. Okay, well, thank you, Trevor. So today I want to talk about OMEGAMON for CICS and CICS PA next release and features. It probably should just say, new release and features, because the release was actually out with the release of CICS version 6.1, which came out in June. But what I want to talk about today is, of course, IBM Z OMEGAMON for CICS, which I just call OMEGAMON for CICS, version 5.6. Now, again, keep in mind that is the current release. It just doesn't follow the same numbers as CICS does. So when CICS version 6.1 came out, they came out with OMEGAMON version 5.6. I'm also going to talk about CICS Performance Analyzer, because as new features got added to OMEGAMON, we added corresponding features to Performance Analyzer as well. That release has not changed. It's still 5.4. And then any questions you might have, and of course, I'm happy to take questions during the presentation as well. So just as an overview, the two products that we're talking about, Z OMEGAMON for CICS is basically a real-time monitor. What would you use a real-time monitor for? Well, basically what you're looking for is any problem in CICS that might cause an outage or a slowdown within the environment. And so normally you'd have some sort of monitor running. And with that monitor, you could do things like cancel tasks, or you could modify some of the resource definitions that are in the system. But effectively with OMEGAMON for Z, you also have historical monitoring. So we'll show you a little bit about the fact that OMEGAMON keeps a bit of the history. So if you have the time, you can actually do problem analysis even after you've gotten the system up and running again. You can do, again, proactive alerting with corrective actions that could be taken based on that alert. So I don't know, let's say the system is suddenly at max task, you could detect that, you could alert that, and then you could actually put an action on it and make sure that it ups max task to a certain value. So the whole idea behind a monitor is to see how the system is running and hopefully prevent some outages. Now, CICS Performance Analyzer also has been around for a while, and it analyzes the SMF data produced by CICS, right? And we're going to talk about performance data versus statistics data, but effectively it works on the same data that a monitor would work on, but CICS Performance Analyzer is actually the reporter for OMEGAMON for CICS, as we're going to see. And what you can do with that is, again, you could look at problem analysis as well, but it's more or less used for trending analysis and probably performance more so than problem analysis. So let's start with OMEGAMON, right? In the situation with OMEGAMON, right, it's been around for many years, since it says 1980. I guess I started in the mid 80s, so it's been around from before I was around in the world of CICS. In any case, it started with the classic UI interface, and it's evolved from there. We can talk a little bit about some of the interfaces available today, but the idea behind a monitor is the ability to do CICSplex-wide data viewing and summarization. So one of the things that you've been doing with OMEGAMON is more in the world of CICSplex, right? So that you can actually start at the CICSplex level and drill down from there. So a lot of customers today are running CICSplexes. They're dynamically routing workload between regions. And so it makes more sense for you to be able to do things at a CICSplex level. Again, we mentioned historical data collection, and the reporting is really done by CICS PA. We have some application tracing available within OMEGAMON. There's bottleneck analysis, which in CICS PA we tend to call wait analysis, but it's why is it you're waiting? Why is a transaction not running? So you could see there's a number of features over the years they've been adding. There's task history collection, which maps very close to the performance data you would see in CICS PA. So of course, we always support CICS metrics and statistics as they come out with new releases. There's transaction gateway support if you're using CICS transaction gateway. And then in terms of the user interfaces, again, you can still use the classic UI, but the enhanced 3270 or E3270 will give you some of the newer features available today. And that's more or less an ISPF type interface. You can also use the TEP, the Tivoli Enterprise Portal, which will give you the webbish one that you see down here at the bottom of the screen, and it will give you a graphical view of some of the data available to you. Now, one of the other things they've been working on with OMEGAMON for CICS is the ability to integrate it with other OMEGAMONs within the system. So if you happen to run DB2 or you run ZOS Connect, there is this ability, and we're doing more and more in this every day, of allowing you to go from one product directly into the other. And I'm going to actually talk about something that literally came out last week that will give you the ability to go from OMEGAMON for CICS directly into OMEGAMON for DB2 and vice versa. So again, we tend to deliver day one support with new releases, and we did that as well with CICS version 6.1, which came out in June, and that's why we have version 5.6, right? Now, let's just talk about who might use OMEGAMON. So there's probably lots of different users, but the main users are operators who are managing the systems just in general, and then CICS SMEs who are responsible for maintaining things like ensuring the production regions are operating properly, monitoring performance, and trying to avoid outages, right? But we're running into problems. There are new languages to deal with, like Java. There's a changing skill base, right? We find that a lot of the older people, of course, are retiring or moving on, and therefore, the skills base is a little weaker than it's been in the past, although, there's a lot of education and training available for them as well. There's different types of workloads today. Everything was 3270 based if you go back 20 years. Today, it's all mobile initiated workloads, or much of it is mobile initiated workloads. And we're also seeing applications that are no longer running in a single region, but they're running all over the place, right? So it makes it really hard to monitor it, and it makes it difficult to solve problems when a problem occurs in one of the legs of an application that runs in 15 different regions, right? So anyway, the data collected by OMEGAMON is used by several people, as we mentioned. But again, I think the main people are CICS SMEs, and I am starting to see application developers look at OMEGAMON for some of its data. So again, these are the features that we discussed a little bit earlier, right? The ones I'd point out here is the real-time historical data collection for CICS resources. So one of the things you'll see when we talk about CICS Performance Analyzer is you have to look at SMF data. And generally, customers will collect the SMF data and they'll offload it in the evening. And therefore, in order to look at the data, you have to go back to look at yesterday's data today. Although if you use log streams, you can look primarily at the data real time. Nonetheless, it makes it easier to use OMEGAMON in some cases to quickly look at some of the information that's available for tasks that have just completed. We have the, again, proactive alerting, which allows us to identify problems and put out a message, and in some cases, take action to fix the problem. So we're going to see a little bit about CICS task history collection. We're not going to talk about application trace facility. There is some enhancements that came out for resource limiting, as we're going to see, but you can do things like service level analysis and bottleneck analysis. Now, we're going to talk about a new feature, and that new feature is going to be the program support, and you're going to see that the information is supplied to CICS PA through the SMF 112 records. So I start by going back to CICS business transaction, although this is kind of like a recap. Hopefully you have some idea if you're attending this of what this application in CICS looks like. But effectively a business transaction, right, would be something like getting a bank balance, right, or processing loans. And in the world of CICS, we have a 4-character TRAN ID that we associate it with it to start the process going. And if you're looking at a 3270 application, you might see a user type in a 4-character TRAN ID, they'll get a screen back, they'll fill in some data, they'll hit enter, they'll get another screen back, and that's a business transaction. Now, again, this is done through a 3270, but it could be just as easily done through a web application, right? An HTML-based application and a web server that's communicating with CICS. Now, the reason I'm coming here is because when you take a look at what runs in the world of CICS, a business transaction is split up into individual tasks, right? And really the tasks are what we measure in the world of CICS. So if you ask a customer how many transactions they run a day and they say, I don't know, 500,000, 1 million, what they're really talking about is the tasks, not business transactions, because that's what we measure in the world of CICS. But behind the scenes, a business transaction is made up of a number of different tasks, which is made up of a number of programs. And one of the issues we've always had is we don't get a lot of insight into what the individual programs are doing. There are various different vendor products that will allow you to get some insight into what a program is doing. And CICS Trace will also give you the ability to see what programs are doing, but we've never had the ability to summarize it, right, at an application level. So now let's talk about the new features, because that's what we're going to address. So OMEGAMON for CICS had multiple RFEs surrounding the functionality around program details. People wanted to see more details about a particular task and what programs it physically ran. So we want to get some statistics based on, I don't know, how many times the program was invoked, how much CPU it used, what the weight was associated with it, things like that. And so this is the premier feature that was released with OMEGAMON version 5.6. There are some other miscellaneous features that we will discuss as well. So this is the task program detail screen that has come out with OMEGAMON version 5.6. Now, if you're an OMEGAMON user, you would have seen some of these other tasks in prior releases. The new tab, I'm sorry, not tasks, but tabs. The new tabs is the program tab over here. Now, what you can see is it'll give you the name of a program. So this is task history detail. So this is an individual task. And what we're actually showing you is all the programs that were invoked, how many times they were invoked, the actual CPU time used by those individual programs, and then the elapsed time as well. So you have the CPU time and you have the elapsed time. You also have how much time it was dispatched, i.e. how much time it had the ability to use CPU, and then how much CPU was used on the QRTCB. If you're trying to make an application thread safe, this could be quite useful because I would try and pick out the programs that use the most amount of CPU. The number of exec CICS calls, if there are any abbends, how many abbends, right, that particular program had. And then the number of mode switches, which is also quite helpful when dealing with trying to make an application thread safe. So just a couple of notes before I just show it to you live. So the metrics are collected over a period of time, and you can see that we have an idea of the program order that was invoked. However, just keep in mind, it doesn't accumulate program details, right, until it returns from a program that it might call. So you just have to be aware that the time that it's collected is when the program is the current program for the task. Again, the invoke count is the number of time it was entered, not necessarily the number of times it was in control. And then the default view will show you this order, as I mentioned, but keep in mind when you see a program invoked, program A links to B, and now you see C, you don't know if A called C or B called C. So that's just some of the caveats. So let's just flip to my live system here. So I have OMEGAMON up and running. And if you watched any of my prior videos, I showed you how to split up your regions into individual CICS plexes. And if you go down to one of these CICS plexes, and I'll go down to my FUW plex over there, you can see I have a number of transactions running per minute. It's about 50,000 per minute right now. And you can see I have a bunch of different regions here. Now, just to clarify what this is, let me just go to my picture over here. This is the environment I'm running. I have a TOR, which also does route logic. So the web stuff comes in through the TOR as well. I dynamically route between two different AORs, AR and A1. So I never know if the workload's going to go here or here. Then I have a region that controls the files. You're muting me, Trevor. Okay.
Sorry, I was
That's
clicking
okay.
on something else, and all the names moved up.
Yeah, no problem. So so the FWFR is to control the vSAM files. I have a DR region that communicates with DB2. I have an IR region for IMS, and I could be routing, as you can see, between approximately 6 different regions. So let's go back to OMEGAMON for a minute. So here are my different regions. And what I want to show you is if I want to take a look at a particular region, I can go to my TOR and do a select, right? And hopefully that won't take too long here, because I don't know what else is running on my system or how slow this will run. But this will give me a full screen region overview, and I can see the individual tasks running over here, right? Now, if I were to select one of these tasks, by now the task is already completed running, right? So it'll show me an empty screen, I'm hoping, when it comes back, because these tasks should be running sub-seconds. So the first problem, oh, look at that. It actually flipped me directly into task history detail. So that's pretty good. And from the task history detail, I can actually look at programs. And so I can see that this transaction actually ran the routing program. So this was routed to one of the other AORs. Now, one of the other interesting tabs within OMEGAMON is the related tab. So if I click on the related tab, you can see that this transaction got routed to A1, which is one of my AORs, and then it also went to FWFR. So I can actually go from here and select one of these and see what program it invoked.
Israel, before you do that, we've got a question in the chat saying,
Sure.
are the programs the ones called via link? What about the ones called with call? And do you capture CPU times for these too?
Yes and yes. So it will capture programs that are called via dynamic call as long as the program issues a CICS command. And in terms of CPU, I will show you right here that for each program, it does collect the CPU time. So you will see the CPU time as long as you see the program showing up here. And so far, I've seen it capture all the dynamic calls. So I haven't run into any issues. But again, the dynamically called program has to do something within the world of CICS, right? So that's part of the problem. With a link command, it's obvious, right? Because you use a CICS link to get to the program. When you dynamically call a program, CICS is not necessarily aware of it until you actually issue a CICS command. But yes, we will capture the data on dynamically called programs.
Brilliant.
So
Thanks.
you could see I went through a related tab, possibly a better one to look through. So let me just go through history. So I'll do an O for history, and then I can use PF4 and I could filter. By the way, you'll see in a page or so in my presentation, you can now filter on programs as well, obviously, because we have the program filter available. And I could do a filter on the transaction ID. So I know I have a decent one here called flow. Let's click OK and let's find, didn't find any. Huh. Let's try that in here. Nope.
Make it uppercase, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's case sensitive now. You're right. It shouldn't have been, but let's try that one more time. Oh. Okay, let's do that again. Yeah, I made sure mine was set to uppercase, but maybe it's not doing that. Click OK. There we go. Thank you for that. So I'm going to pick one of these because it's more interesting. So you could see that if I go through programs on Flow, you can actually see that this comes in via the web. It runs DFHBA, BBLI, and then you could see this TCP list, which is the main program that it runs. You could see how many times it was invoked, the CPU time, the elapsed time, the dispatch time, right? And then again, with the related tab, you'll see that I go off to various different regions. So it's running transaction BPMT, which happens to sync point. You notice that the task number is the same here. So it's really the same task. It just has two entries because of the sync point. It goes to my DB2 region. It goes to my file owning region as well. So that's what you can see in terms of the task program details. Now, I'm just
question, Ezriel. Sorry.
Yes, that's all right.
So in OMEGAMON Classic for DB2, we can create many NTH files to achieve a depth of more than 1 week or even more. That's more of a comment than a question.
Okay. Accept that comment. So let me just show you one other thing that just came out last week. So I'm just going to pull up a place where you could read about this, right? So about a week ago, they came out with navigating directly between CICS task history and DB2 thread history. You could read through this. What I wanted to point out here is this is, because we're doing the continuous delivery. So you need an APAR, which is mentioned in here. And if you click on the IO tab as part of task history detail, you now get some task DB2 statistics and DB2 times, which we pull out of OMEGAMON for DB2. And anything highlighted, you can click on within the screen, and it will actually take you off to OMEGAMON for DB2. So this just came out literally last week. You could read through this article. It'll also give you the it's mostly screen prints and the resolution's not great, but you can see the PTFs that are required right over here, right? So that is something new. If I were going to go to my system, for example, and I click on the IO tab in task history detail, you see the bottom of my screen is empty. With that PTF installed, you'll actually be able to see the DB2 information, and you can click through to OMEGAMON for DB2. So that's part of the stuff they're changing within OMEGAMON to allow the cross communication between the tooling. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay, that's not where we were. I lost the full screen. Okay, so let's just go back down to where we were. Sorry about that. Okay. So in terms of task history filters, we kind of showed this already, right? The ability for you to search on a particular program through the task history filter, and that will pull up all the transactions that went through that program. So that's quite useful as well. I probably should have used that in the little demonstration that I did. Obviously, it's case sensitive, so you got to be careful, right? Only transaction and terminal filters are case sensitive. So of course, I type it in lowercase. But nonetheless, you can search and it'll only pull up the transactions that ran through that particular program. So that's kind of nice because depending on how much data you keep in task history, you could have a lot to search through. Oops. And I just did that again. I hit the wrong tab. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go back to here. Sorry, why is it not showing it to me? Let's go here. Okay, sorry. So now this is a program summary, right? So think about it, when you want to look at a program summary, right, you can actually look at it by region. So you're going to go underneath the region and you look at this program aggregation, and effectively through the region summary, you can actually take a look at all the programs that were used. Now, there's a little bit more data here. I clicked on the Use tab. You can see the programs. Notice the columns are 2 through 10 of 15. Down here is 9 through 15 because I couldn't make the screen wide enough. So there is an overlap between some of these columns. But nonetheless, you get an invoke count, a transaction count, again, the CPU time, the average CPU time, the elapsed time, so you could see some elapsed time. You can even sort, you can see the sorting capability, average elapsed time, dispatch time. So same sort of information you saw earlier, CPU time, but the difference is instead of looking at it at the task level, you're looking at it at the history level over a period of time. And again, down here, you can again see the number of CICS calls, the average, and so on. Then if I were to page down, he accumulates the data for all programs used by a particular CICS region. It's accumulated and passed through a CMF record. So again, we can also report on this using CICS Performance Analyzer. And the data is reset when the statistics for the program manager are reset. So to take you to this screen, right, which is the details of a particular program through history. Let me just do the OMEGAMON example one more time. And what I'm going to do is back all the way out to the region itself. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to do an R, right, for resources, and then P for program summary. So R and P. And then you could see I can click on the Use tab, right? And I can see during a particular interval, right, the programs used on this particular region. And then I can go down to this big one, TCP list, and I can do a history on that puppy, right? And it'll show me based on the interval collection I'm using. So this is minute by minute, how often the program was invoked, the transaction count. So obviously if it's half of that, it's obviously invoking it twice, the total CPU time, the average CPU time, the elapsed time, and so on. And then I can go in and select one of these intervals. And that's where you're going to get the information you're seeing on the screen, right? So it's going to give you the program details. It gives you the statistics over that interval. There's the library it's coming from, the program usage for this particular region, the definition, how it's defined, and then any resource signature if you're interested in seeing that as well. So that's what I'm kind of displaying on this page over here. Okay. Now, because this is a new feature, we also support program aggregation through situations and alerts, right? So you can actually build a situation where in this particular example, we say if the value of the program accumulation detail number of add-bans is greater than a certain number, we could put out a message. You could see program mixed STRS is abending frequently. You can also take an action on that as well. So obviously we can support alerting and situations with the new program feature, right? And again, I've already showed you this, right? This is the history that shows the usage at each interval. It depends on how often you collect in terms of interval collection. I have it set to a minute. If you collect it every 5 minutes, it'll do it by every 5 minutes and so on. Okay. Now, the control for this feature is obviously through the OMEGAMON global data area, but you can also dynamically change the setting, right? So you can see that's for task program detail. That's the aggregate program detail. This is to write to task history, and then the write to SMF, which would be required when using CICS PA. So let me just shift one more time here and then show you that I can go back to the region itself, and I can do a C, and then I can do T, and that's where I can turn it on and off. And I see I have my write to SMF off. So if I wanted to modify that, I can just click modify and I can turn that on. And I can confirm that. And now I'm writing to SMF as well. Okay. Okay. So some additional enhancements. We have resource limiting resolution for CPU increased to allow transaction limits to be set by millisecond. I think that should be intuitively obvious, but it should always been there. But now you can set it by milliseconds. So it will give you a more granular ability to prevent tasks from impacting the system. You could find resources within a group of regions, and it's more intuitive. It has a drop down today, so you just have to try it to see it. There's some new CICS policy statistics that are available, right? So that you can take actions in OMEGAMON, right? And he'll show you the statistics on those policies. And then you have the transaction gateway memory statistics now available as well. And then again, I mentioned some of the integration already, right? OMEGAMON CICS and OMEGAMON for DB2. You always had the ability for a running transaction, or at least in the recent times, to go from a running transaction from OMEGAMON for CICS to DB2. The problem is transactions tend to run really quickly. So unless the transaction was hanging, there was no way you could go directly to DB2 from OMEGAMON for CICS to OMEGAMON for DB2. Now it's supported in the history as well. So that was an enhancement that came out last week. We also have some OMEGAMON for CICS and OMEGAMON messaging integration as well. So you can watch a message written in MQ trigger, a transaction in CICS. And then OMEGAMON for CICS and OMEGAMON integrator allows you to combine a bunch of different situations from different OMEGAMON products and generate a single alert. So that was a little bit about OMEGAMON for CICS, OMEGAMON for CICS. Now let's talk about CICS Performance Analyzer, right? So again, keep in mind, the Performance Analyzer is really the reporter for OMEGAMON for CICS. You already saw that you get some task history details, but one of the things I wanted to show you is why would you need a reporter, right? So you're probably wondering to yourself, you know, well, I could just look at some of the history through here and I could take a look and see, you know, whatever it is I might need. So, but I wanted to show you, let me go into one of the regions here. I guess it doesn't matter which one I do. See, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to go through history and I'm trying to remember. Nope. Well, it'll come to me in just a second if I can think where I did that. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. Okay. So this is the information on the task history status, right? So this is a file that keeps the task history data. And what you'll notice is the data storage size I'm using is about 351 meg, right? Which allows me to capture, if you look at the primary records, about 532,000 records. And you can see that this time span that it captures is 1 hour and 9 minutes. So the problem is if you ever wanted to do any long-term problem analysis, you've got about an hour's worth of data that you can look at. And I suppose you could make that file bigger. You can give it up to 4 gig, but depending on how busy your environment is, at some point in time, that information will roll off. So if you wanted to do any trend analysis or performance tuning, you basically want to be able to report on the same data that OMEGAMON is providing for you. And that's what you'd use CICS Performance Analyzer for. So what is CICS PA? It's basically a reporting tool that looks at SMF data and produces tabular reports amongst other things, right? So it's not just tabular reporting anymore. I'm going to show you we can stream the data into Splunk or Elastic, for example, if you wanted to today. And the way it works, again, is it looks at SMF data. Now, we provide about 250 or so sample report forms. A report form is an individual report, and it is in tabular format, but again, it can be streamed to an analytics engine. And it's for performance or statistical analysis. And again, you could look at it through the Explorer, or if you use that support pack, you can actually stream it into Splunk as an example. So what do we...
Sorry, Ezriel, I've got another
Sure.
question come up. Can I just interrupt you there?
Yeah,
Oh, excuse me. In OMEGAMON Classic for CICS, only one historical task file can be created. The depth of the historical data sometimes is not enough to correlate transaction execution with DB2. Is there plans to increase the size of the depth of the CICS historical task? I think the max size for this file is 4 gigabytes.
Yes, that's part of the problem. Right now, it's 4 gigabytes. I'm sure that, without pre-announcing anything, I know they're looking at it to try and see how they can increase the amount of data that is collected, right? But again, if you really wanted to do some analysis, you can also use CICS Performance Analyzer. So that's really, once we run out of the space, right? And depending on the amount of regions you actually have, right? You might, it's not just 4 gig, it's 4 gig per region, right? So part of the problem is that data is also collected within SMF. And so you can use CICS Performance Analyzer to actually do problem analysis as well as performance tuning. So I think a lot of people don't realize that you can pick an interval of time and you could look at the individual transaction records for performance, and you can tie it to DB2 as well, because the performance analyzer will look at DB2 accounting records within SMF. So there are ways to do it with CICS PA. I can't say whether or not, they're going to be able to increase the size of that file, but I think they're looking into alternatives. So that I can say. Okay.
Right,
So
right.
hopefully that kind of answers the question. They're aware of it, but I don't think they've quite figured out how they're going to move forward on that yet. Okay. So you use this to analyze CICS performance. You can use it for problem analysis as well, right? You can try and improve CICS resource usage, and you can read through much of this on your own, right? You can increase the availability of resources. You could see usage trends. And again, it depends on the type of report you're looking for. We have over 250 samples, right? Now, anything you could do to improve the performance of CICS will overall reduce the CPU used within your environment and hopefully improve the throughput of a particular application. However, I will point out that fixing an application will always save you more in terms of CPU than actually improving the performance of the system, but you never know. Sometimes applications start to use additional resources in different areas that they haven't before, and therefore you want to take a look at the trends of things that are going on. So it's relatively easy to use. There is an ISPF dialog to build, maintain, and submit these reports. You get tabular reports, but again, you can also stream the data into an analytics engine. You can also get extract data sets for cross-system work. So you could see a transaction floating through multiple regions through CICS PA, just as you could through OMEGAMON, right? And again, what do I use this for? Trend and capacity planning. For example, if it's a VSAM shop, and I'm using LSR pools, I'll tune LSR pools, I'll look at file strings, and I can produce a report using CICS PA. And then what I generally do, and I'll show you in a second, is I use something called a report set. And a report set is a bunch of different reports that you put into a set. So let's say there's 20 reports you want to run. You put it in this report set. The advantage is it'll actually build 20 different reports with one pass through the data. So the advantage of using CICS PA is you can actually build multiple reports with one pass through the data, hopefully saving time and CPU. So these are the different SMF type of records it can process. You have the standard CICS SMF 110 type 1 and type 2 for performance and statistics. You could look at logger records, transaction gateway. And again, you have the DB2 and MQ accounting. We mentioned the OMEGAMON XE for CICS. That's especially important for the program reporting, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then you have the new ZOS Connect EE, which came out also fairly recently. Now, you could feed that SMF data into CICS Performance Analyzer. You can also view log streams. So you don't necessarily have to wait till the SMF data is offloaded at night and run against the day before's data. You can actually run directly against log streams. You also have the ability to create this thing called a historical database. This is more for trend analysis, where you carve out some of the data from the SMF records and save it off to this historical database. And you could do some summarizations within there as well. The idea being, I want to run a report to see what my transaction count was on a monthly basis over the last year, right? You don't want to go through a year's worth of SMF data. So you'll probably extract the transaction count into a historical database, and then you can run that report in minutes, right? Because you've had the data already summarized. So that's why you use a historical database. However, today, I don't know if you're going to use that as much as maybe you're just going to stream the data via JSON into an analytics engine such as Elastic and Splunk, right? And we have some sample dashboards that you can use and take a look at. You can also get the data in CSV format, right? So that you can import it into a spreadsheet software like Excel, or use it within the Explorer. And then you can also put some of that data within DB2 so you can run SQL queries against it. And we always support formatted reports, right? So again, what is new? Well, again, there's the new output for the JSON lines. And again, today we have the support pack that allows you to use the report set called Analytic, which we supply, which will stream or push the data to an analytics engine of your choice. If you install the sample dashboards, you can actually see it in Splunk, and we also have new dashboards for Elastic as well. And that is just a piece of data that we stream down there. You could choose to stream less or more. It's really up to you and what you want to look at. And since it's provided in source format, you can modify the dashboards as you want to. Now, we also have some new features for ZOS Connect support, right? So we now are able to process the SMF 123 records, and it's just showing you that we have a report set for subsystem reports for ZOS Connect. We have some extracts. We can forward that data again to Splunk as well, and we have a sample dashboard for ZOS Connect. So historically, the CICS Performance Analyzer will allow you to provide task level details, but we didn't have the program level details because nobody collected it. However, now that OMEGAMON for CICS collects program level details, you saw that I could flip that on, right, within OMEGAMON. And what it will do is it'll pass that information via the SMF 112 record subtype 202 so that you can report on program details. So if you're familiar a little bit with CICS Performance Analyzer, one of the things you will see is that a report set is one of those things you can go into that'll allow you to accumulate various different reports that you wish to run. And underneath the subsystem reports, there's a new line for OMEGAMON program reporting. And that's where you get to select the type of reports that you want for the program level reporting. Now, like other reports, we support list and summary. List is what CICS PA refers to as a detailed report. So a list report on transactions would give you one record. You have one record per transaction, and we would list them out one at a time. And so a list report is really a detailed report. Summary is, again, a summarization, right? So we're able to summarize over an hour period of time. And again, we can report on performance data or statistics data as well. So this is just, you could pick either one. And then this is an example of a tabular report. Keep in mind, you can again push this data to an analytics engine, and you can build some nice graphs associated with this. But this is a list report, right? So it's detailed, and you could see it gives you the start times, start date and time, the transaction here, the task number, the Apple ID it ran under, the unit of work information, the net name, and the number of programs. And then down here, you can actually see the programs that were involved when this particular transaction ran. It'll give you a count, and it'll give you the details we saw in OMEGAMON. So it'll give you CPU elapsed time, dispatch time, the amount of time you spent on QR for that CPU, and then any mode switches, how many CICS commands, and the number of abbents. So basically, this is the ability to report on the data you collect in OMEGAMON. So if you don't have enough storage, right, in task history within OMEGAMON, then you can always report on it afterwards using CICS Performance Analyzer, right? So again, it has two sections, which you just saw, right? One which will give you the task information, right? And then underneath it, it'll give you the program level detail. And you saw it gives us basically the same detail as you get for OMEGAMON for CICS. So this is a program list report, and you can see over here again the same information. There's the transaction. There is the number of programs that it actually ran. So there's one, and then just some total information. And you can see again within this list report, we're seeing the individual transactions showing up. And this is showing you several programs. And it's just another example of a list report. So one of the things you can do is also summarize, right? So the whole idea of a summary report is not to see every friggin' transaction and all the programs it issued. I mean, I suppose if you were doing some problem analysis and you wanted to delve in and look at the transactions that ran and all the programs during that particular interval, you might drill down into that particular piece of time and have a look-see, right? But otherwise, you're probably looking to summarize the data, and you can summarize that data within a key sequence, right? So this is an example of where we're actually summarizing by individual tasks. So you can see there's the transaction, there's the Apple ID it ran under, there's the particular program that we're seeing that is the summary. And so we're summarizing underneath this program. This is the number of tasks, the count, and then the average CPU time, the total CPU time, and the max CPU time. So that's not too bad, right? And then you can see again with the elapsed time, right? The average, total, and max. You also see the min and the number of exec CICS calls, right? So the total exec CICS calls, right? And then you can see the other individual programs that were invoked when this particular transaction ran. So this is just a way to run a summary where you're summarizing the programs by task. This is just a different order. So this is an order by CPU, right? So you can see, again, the start date, the start time, the Apple ID. There's the transaction again in the program. And you can see that we put the highest CPU first. So this is ordered from high CPU to low CPU. And again, you can see individual transactions and programs here. And that's just the details that go along with that selection criteria, right? So again, there's two levels of selection, task and program, and you could see the data was on the prior page. So now I'll open it up to any questions. Trevor?
Yeah, thanks very much. Now, if anyone's got any questions, if they want to type them into the chat, then I'll read them out. I'll just pause a minute. Let's see. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Ezriel, how would you rate OMEGAMON now after all these additions and work that's been done on it?
Well, I will tell you that, special thanks to Henry Fogwill from Express Scripts, who, I don't want to call him a complainer. No, I'm just kidding. There were some suggestions that he made that we were able to implement, and I will say that we're getting a lot more to the public a lot quicker than we were in the past. So one of the things that I'll mention is we're working on more in terms of CICS SM without pre-announcing stuff here. We're working on supporting things like system groups, right? So that you can actually group transactions by groups rather than just at the high level CICS level. We're also looking at the possibility of other ways of grouping, and I'll just leave it at that. So I have to say that we've been bringing more, features to market a lot quicker, more recently than we have in the past. So I'm pretty excited about what we're seeing.
Ah, sounds pretty good. And did you give it a score out of 10?
Where it is today, is really tough. You know me, I'm tough on products. I'll call it an 8 out of 10 right now, right?
Okay,
yeah.
let's move on then, because
there's a couple other things I want to see, but I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Is CICS PA a cost item now?
All the products are IBM products, so you have to talk to IBM to figure out for your environment, what the cost is. But it is a product that IBM does charge for, yes.
Okay. Have we got any more questions, or shall I move on? Well, let me just say, if you do come up with any questions, you can always email me and I'll pass them straight on to Ezriel, and I'm sure you'll get back fairly promptly to people who do send in further questions, won't you?
Yeah, I think we had one other. Partha, you want to come off mute and tell me, because I didn't see the question that you had. Let me see.
Yeah, I was just sending it to you directly.
Okay, that's why.
And the general chat now. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying, does OMEGAMON for CICS have its own reporting? Not anymore, right? So they're both IBM products, right? OMEGAMON for CICS and CICS Performance Analyzer are IBM products that Rocket just support for IBM. They build the features and support the tooling under the covers. So OMEGAMON for CICS did have a reporter in the past, but I guess they gave it up in light of CICS PA providing a lot more granular reporting than OMEGAMON could do. And so OMEGAMON does not have a reporter today. It uses OMEGAMON for CICS as its reporter. And again, depending on how you license tooling from IBM, it is possible that you already have some of this tooling and not realize it. So I would always check with, your IBM representative just to see. I've had customers come back to me and say, we didn't even realize it, but we actually had CICS Performance Analyzer as part of our tool set. We just didn't know.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. How much program level capture does cost in terms of CPU?
Now, that was the question I was waiting for, right? So it's about, from our measurements, it's about 0.5%, right? To collect the program level details, right? But your results may vary. It actually is a lot lower than I thought, because that was the first thing I hit them with is, what does it cost to collect this type of information? But so far from our testing, we've only been able to see about 0.5%.
Okay, good. And someone else has said, not a question, but this has been great content. So that's what you like to hear, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, hopefully we can give you some updates in the future. With this continuous delivery, it gets a little difficult. So I prepared this before last week when, they just gave us the new DB2 enhancement for task history going off to OMEGAMON for DB2. So just watch this space. I'd say take a look at the IBM community for, AI ops, right? And that's where we post things as they come out as well.
Okay, smashing. All right, well, let's move on then and let me share my screen. I've lost it. There we are. So yeah, let me say thanks very much, Ezriel. That was great as usual. Some of the comments in the chat are saying you were not too bad today, as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah, and because we're a virtual user group, please assume that you're getting your usual virtual round of applause from all of us. All those people on mute are now in their heads clapping at the end of your presentation. So let's move on. And I'm afraid I haven't got any news for you, but in terms of articles, the one that Ezriel talked about, navigating directly between CICS task history and DB2 thread history, that's by Paul Kenny and Mick Harris. That's in the IBM Z and Linux One community and was put there on the 3rd of November. So worth a look. Then we've got this one, CICS IA host side report generation by Preethig Kashri M. And that's in the same place. That was 18th of October. And also on the same date by the same author was CICS IA scanner components in CICS IA. So let's move on and see what's coming soon. It's always strange at this time of year when we start talking about things going on next year, but here we are, 10th of January. We've got new ways to analyze CICS transaction and statistics data. And that's by Todd Haverkost, and he's Senior ZOS Performance Consultant at IntelliMagic. Excuse me. And then after that, we've got 7th of March, when we've got Larry Strickland, Chief Product Officer at Data Kinetics Limited. And he's talking about attention application developers. In-memory performance is key to modernization efforts. So look out for those, put those dates in your diary. I want to mention the Arcati Mainframe Yearbook. So many of us are actual mainframe users. So the annual Arcati Mainframe User Survey is out there, and you can find the form at iteched.com/AMY23/user survey 23. Tell us what it's really like where you work. And if you're a vendor or consultant or any kind of mainframe service provider, you can get a free entry in the yearbook by completing the form at iteched.com/AMY23/vendor entry. And we've been talking quite a lot about DB2 today. So you'll be pleased to know that we're now starting a virtual DB2 user group. There've been lots of requests for us to do it, and its first meeting is in January, when we've got Craig Mullins, President and Principal Consultant of Mullins Consulting, and he's going to be talking about understanding your rolling 4-hour average to tune DB2 and lower mainframe costs. And you can find that user group at iteched.com/virtual DB2. And if you're not a DB2 user, but you've got colleagues who do, then tell them about it. And just a reminder that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of CICS and the virtual CICS user group by following us on Facebook and Twitter, and by joining the virtual CICS group on LinkedIn. And remember to like us on Facebook and everywhere else. Social media runs on likes. And if you do tweet, then the hashtag to use is #virtualCICS. And of course, all our meetings are now recorded and are available on YouTube. So that's it for this meeting. Can I thank you all very much for attending? Thanks to IntelliMagic, Broadcom, and Data Kinetics for sponsoring our user group and making these meetings possible. And of course, I particularly like to thank Ezriel Gross for his presentation today. Another excellent presentation, Ezriel. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So that's it. Thank you all very much for joining the meeting. And hopefully I'll see you all again on the 10th of January. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Trevor.